Welcome back to the channel. Today we're working on the intake manifold for the supercharged Jeep Grand Cherokee. I'm putting this video together now, and I don't know what happened to my intro video. So, get you caught up. We're going to start welding it fully. And I cut the plate with the threaded part that actually bolts to it. I cut that off so I can get inside the plenum and put some stitches in there. So, we'll be starting from there. Got the plate off of this thing. We're just putting a couple stitches on the inside just to try to help keep them separating. I don't know how much boost ultimately this thing's going to see, but I'd like to hold it together as best as possible. But I'm just going to flip it over, put some stitches on this side, and then we can weld our plate back in. The inside is welded, or at least stitched in several places. Throttle body flange is all the way welded on. So this plate all the way bolted on, except for that one bolt. I've got to get a longer one. Instead of moving the bolt hole, I just built up the weld and drilled the hole. So I need a longer bolt for that. Anyway, I'm gonna set this up about an eighth inch from the edge and tack it. I might go 3/16. I might go half the plate and tack it, and then we'll start welding. I'm going to weld as much as I can with it still bolted to the lower, or not the lower, bolted to the cylinder head side. Here we are, all welded up. I'm not the best welder, but I think it looks pretty good for my work. Once that cools down, I can bolt it back together and just see how warped it is. I'll probably have to take that to Tim's like I did this thing and flatten it out on his belt sander. And I think for right now I'm just going to RTV it when I put it on. I plan on having gaskets cut out, but I don't know out of what or from where yet. I'm still working on that, but for right now RTV will work. Some of the parts I ordered came in, like the throttle body spacer and the aluminum bungs to weld in. I think I've got it laid out how I want it. So I've got, this used to go to the blow-off valve. I think I can use this for that now. So that one's done. I need one for the brake booster, and I need one for the intake air temp sensor, which I'm leaving in the manifold. You can put this in the intake tube, but you're kind of lying to yourself. If you can't tune it, you do that so it doesn't pull so much timing, it reads cooler. But if you can tune it, there's no reason not to put it in the hottest spot. It makes it easier for you to dial in your timing and fuel, at least for a margin of safety. Anyway, brake booster, intake air temp, blow off valve. The 4.7 throttle body doesn't have a place for the map sensor. This is a Honda one. This is a 1.75 bar. Anyway, where it connects to the throttle body, this doesn't do that. So I've cut out a piece of aluminum. I'm gonna have to drill tap, and I'll probably have to make a gasket. Eventually I'll go to a higher bar map sensor, probably after this thing goes forwards. I think we're gonna do kind of a budget stroker for this thing in the future, so I will end up running more boost, but right now the 1.75 is good for about 11 psi. I think that's how it's gonna work out. This thing was a cheap eBay. It was 55 bucks. It's got that weird threaded pattern in it, but we'll leave that alone for now, and then eventually we'll end up cutting that out. But I am curious if that actually does anything on the dyno. I doubt it, but maybe. So anyway, I'm gonna get this set up. I'm gonna drill these holes, get that thing ready. I'll have to make a gasket for this because it doesn't have an O-ring. The SRT4 maps have an O-ring, I believe, on the sensor. That would be easier to mount, but I'm not that worried about it. I've already got the Honda connector on, so we're just gonna run with it. Let's get to drilling. Got everything acetoned off in place where it's going to go. I scooted this over a little more just because the throttle linkage on the Jeep sticks out further. We got these guys dropped in. We're all welded up. I just ran to Ace and I forgot to get a dang fitting, so I'm going to have to run back. But my solution for this, instead of getting a gasket or making anything, I went to Ace and got an O-ring. And then I used this bit that I use in the mill, this is a counterboard bit, and just kind of drop that down a bit so that I've got enough pressure to seal, but not so much that I'm breaking things. So, solved. I also got a longer bolt for this. Where that one bolt went through the rib, I just built up a bunch of weld and drilled it, so I had to get a longer bolt. So that'll work. That problem solved. This was a little bit warped, but as I tightened the bolts, it flattened out good enough, so it'll work for the weekend. At some point when I have it off, I'll run it across the belt sander at Tim's, but for now it's going to be fine. So what I want to do next is get this apart, get all the crap out of it, RTV it, and bolt it all together for the last time this time. Then we'll set it in the truck, make sure this is going to work. This is where the map sensor kind of was heading before the wires for it. Everything else came off of this side of the harness. Intake air temp's going to drop right in there. And I'll go back to the store and we'll get a fitting for the brake booster. Let's go. Moment of truth. We're going to see if this thing will bolt together. This is all the RTV I could find. I don't know what to do with my big tube, so here's for hoping it's enough. I just set the intake on there. I'm just going to time lapse the rest of this. I've already done an intake video of how to remove and how to put on, so you can watch that if you need details. But I've got to tighten the bolts, put the fuel injectors in, fuel rail. I will show you what I'm going to use for the idle air control motor for this. The Jeep one doesn't work in this throttle body, but oh, I guess I'll just tell you, but I'll show you later. But the Ram one bolts right in, and it's perfect. It's right, uses the same connector. And then I'll have to figure out, it's going to be its own video on how to adapt the 4.7 throttle body, because this isn't really relevant to what I'm doing. You can put any throttle body on about anything. So for some of the guys that want to adapt the bigger 4.7 onto their 4.0, I'll go over that in another video. I made this flange so that will bolt right on, but my plan is to make some flanges, maybe at least a couple of them. I'll see how much I can do it for, if it's cheap enough. I can't do this for anybody else, this whole thing. This costs way too much. But I'll make a video and a plate to adapt those to the factory 4-liter location. So anyway, let's get to it. Intake manifold is on there. I had to modify this just a little bit to get it to fit. Just a little tweak. I don't have the cables hooked up yet. That's going to take a good bit of work. It's going to be its own video, but it runs. The camera died, is why I didn't finish the time lapse of me putting it on. It's probably going to take until next weekend for me to get it done, but the next video is going to be adapting this stuff over to the 4.7 throttle body. If this was on a standard manifold and the 4.7 throttle body was adapted, this stuff would reach. You would really more or less just have to modify this by sacrificing the lever arm off the 4-liter one. But because it's moved over and up, I'm going to have to modify or remake this, which may just be an adapter thing. I may bolt things where it used to bolt and scoot it over somehow. I'm not entirely sure, but I'll figure that out. Right now it looks like the throttle pedal cable is going to be fine. The TV cable will reach. Cruise control, I'm either going to have to move the motor this way or just get rid of it, but that's for a later video. It sounds like it's about to come down again, so I better get inside. If you hung in here this long, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Appreciate every one of you. And I'll keep piddling with things.